Blackbird. My dad took me for a ride in his truck one time to do something that he'd kind of gotten this some kind of a reputation for doing. He would, when people would have dogs that were sick or needed putting down, they'd call my dad. The phone was ringing. When the kid thought it wouldn't quit, he picked it up. His voice was changing. Not even his mother could tell him apart from his dad now. Some lady started talking to him like she knew who he was. He heard some of what the lady was trying to say, how cut up she was about some dog. That's when he told her he wasn't his dad. She said her name was Meryl. The kid told her to hang on. Outside, down the driveway, his dad was up to his waist under his mom's car, both hands covered in grease. The car was bruised, indented, and reddish purple like a heart. It belonged to the boy's mother who'd left it behind when she left his dad. His dad was finally trying to get the damned thing running. He said he was going to sell it, but before he could move it, it had to run. The kid told him some Meryl was on the phone to talk about some dog. First the man said, "Who?" Then when he realized he didn't know who Meryl was, he knew why she was calling. "Son of a bitch," he said. Then he dropped his tools on the ground and drug himself out from under the car. "You feel like going for a ride? You maybe could learn something," the man said. They'd been walking on eggshells all morning, till the phone rang. Then the man was dead set on taking the boy along so he could teach the boy something he knew the boy knew nothing about. So the boy said, "Sure, I'll go for a ride." And the boy didn't ask where they were going. By the time the man put the phone down in its cradle to go to his room, he wasn't angry anymore. The boy thought he must be changing his clothes, but when he came back, he looked the same. Not even his arms or his hands had been washed. "You going like that?" the boy said. "You sound like your mother," the man said. "That's funny," the boy said. "Mom said I sound like you. A lot of people say I sound like you." But the man didn't say anything. "So, where are we going?" "Have a job to do." "What kind of a job?" "Got to take care of a dog." For his truck to leave the driveway, the man had to manage his way around his wife's car. Gradually, the road was widening beside the car, and the truck's tire tracks were cutting through the grass and into the dirt. The boy thought they were going to feed the dog or something, like the owner was out of town. But when they got there, a woman was standing on the porch, waiting with her arms folded. Though the boy already knew who the woman was, the man told him her name was Meryl. Meryl handed the man a foil package that fit perfectly into the palm of his hand. By the time the boy shook Meryl's hand, her hand was cold. "Just like you asked me for," she said. The man passed the foil to the boy. It felt too hot for the boy to hold, but the boy thought if Meryl could hold it, then so could he. He knew his dad had work-calloused hands, but not Meryl. This made him think of his mom again, who could wash dishes in scalding hot water with her bare hands. "She's over here," Meryl said, but she said it like she didn't want to. Her voice was a whisper. She led them around the corner outside the house. "I put her on the old blanket," Meryl said, before rounding the next corner, "just like you asked me to." She looked at the man in a way that made the boy feel like he didn't know who she was talking to, like she knew she was asking something of his dad that the boy didn't know he had. Then, single file, they approached the dog on the blanket. "What's her name?" the man said. "Blackbird," Meryl said. The dog's ears moved like it was listening, but its tail didn't budge. "Same as mine," she said. Then she kneeled on the wet ground in her clean white dress. She began petting the dog and saying her name. "Why don't you introduce us?" the man said to Meryl. So Meryl took his hand and laid it softly on the dog's head. Then Meryl started to choke. Her hand was still on the man's hand that was on the dog, like they were giving the dog a blessing. The boy didn't know if she was going to cry or get sick. Then the man had to ask, Did you get the shovel? Merrill nodded and took her hand off the man's hand and pointed over at a tree where the shovel was standing with its blade stuck in the ground. Then the dog began to whimper, and Merrill rose to her feet. She was holding to the dog's back like she was trying to keep her balance. Then she had to kneel back down again. "One last time," she said. She held the dog's ears in her hands and kissed it on the head. Then she rose and walked quickly to the corner of her house, leaning over like she wanted to run. The boy didn't know where she was going or what was happening. The sky was white, and the man was talking as he was petting the dog. His words were for his son, but he was whispering for the dog. "You don't have to help if you don't want," he whispered. But still, the boy didn't know what the man needed help with. After the argument they'd already had that morning about his not wanting to help with the car, it wasn't right to quit on his dad again. "You don't have to be here no more," the man said. "Not if you don't want." "I'm already here," the boy said, not knowing at all where he was. "Come feed her then," the man said. He was still in the same place beside the dog, so the boy kneeled down in front of her, right where Merrill had been. The dog's mouth was soft. She was eating like she wasn't hungry, but the meatloaf was too good to refuse. She was being gentle. Her tongue was moving slow, like her whole mouth was frozen. "Just a little at a time," the man said. "One big bite for last." Then he took a small bite for himself and let the dog lick his fingers. He had his other hand behind his back. The boy fed the dog her last bite. When she swallowed, the man brought his hand from behind his back, and in his hand was a gun, and he shot the dog in the ear. It happened fast, too fast for the boy to know what happened. The sound of the gun was ringing in the boy's head. He didn't know what to do, and the man was looking him in the eye. "She was suffering," he explained. "Merrill couldn't take no more." The man was looking at his boy, waiting for him to speak, but the boy was busy wondering if maybe Merrill had been watching them through a window somewhere. He wondered if she could have heard them. He even wondered if she didn't see them but still heard them, if she thought his and his father's voices were the same. So he tried to remember how they sounded and what they might have said. "Son, this here is not a bad thing. If it was me, this is how I'd have it go." But the boy saw the dog's mouth was crooked. She looked like she'd been broken into. "Just don't be calling me when your time comes," the boy said. Then he said, "You said we were taking care of a dog, not killing one." Then a lot of things ran through the man's mind. He had a lot of things stored up that he could say, but instead he said, "First time's the hardest." "I don't believe you. How's it supposed to get easier?" "It don't," the man confessed. They tried to look at one another, but they looked at the ground instead. "You can dig the hole over there by the shovel, or you can watch, or you can go wait in the truck." The man began to wrap the dog in the blanket. The boy left the foil on the ground when he walked away. Not even when the boy slammed the truck's door did Merrill look to see if it was over. She knew it was better not to look at such things. The boy could still see what had happened. When the man returned to the front of the house, he leaned the shovel next to Merrill's door. That's when the boy first saw the blackbirds painted on the tops of Merrill's white shutters. Then the man pulled himself into the truck, but he didn't like what he saw, so he slipped out again to put the shovel in the garage instead. He took the ball of foil from his pocket and tossed it behind the seat. He pulled the driver's door closed without slamming it. Then he took one last look at the house. In the meantime, the boy figured out what he'd wanted to say. "Why did Merrill call you? I mean, why you?" he asked. The man said lots of people called him. He didn't know why they thought of him when they needed this kind of help. "Probably because they think it'll hurt me less than it'll hurt them," he said. "And I guess word just gets around." From inside the cab, the boy had never seen such bright colors before, or such a variety of colors, new colors that made things look more alive. The black bench seat looked not worn but stained with purple. The trees were floating in the sky with the clouds, the water bathing in the light of the river. The rusted orange hood of the truck looked more like a traveling sunset than some rumbling metal thing, and the blue that made up the road ahead. He expected the asphalt would be black or old and gray, but it was blue, pure, unsoiled. The stripes running down the sides of the road were more like silver than white, like vapor trails streaking through a clear blue sky. They were on their way home, following the blue on the ground before them, while everything behind slowly drained, fading to black and white. Meanwhile, the woman's car was still blocking the driveway, like nothing in the world had changed. They passed it like it wasn't really there. The boy had been looking out the windows while thinking about talking to his mother, thinking about telling her all that he had seen, though he knew she wouldn't be home when he arrived. Even if she was, he thought she wouldn't hear him, and perhaps never had.